Like I said earlier, they actually had odds that, she was like third or fourth in the betting odds to be MVP of the WNBA. That's such a slap in the face to every WNBA player. It's unbelievable, right?
This story was never just about basketball. Not points, not assists, not banners in the rafters. It's about power. For decades, Geno Auriemma stood as the gatekeeper of women's basketball. He decided who mattered, who got the spotlight, and who disappeared into the shadows. But Clark rewrote the rules. She didn't need his approval, his program, or his checkbook. She built her empire without him. And when he finally came knocking, she shut the door with quiet authority. I don't need you. You need me. Every revenge story begins with a mistake. Geno's wasn't a bad play or a blown timeout. It was arrogance. Blinding, fatal arrogance. Because before Clark was the face of the sport, before the sold-out arenas and record-breaking TV ratings, she was just a kid with a dream. And like every girl with a ball in her hands, that dream had a name, UConn. The dynasty.
That's the worst part about new fans. They have no perspective. There's no context. So they just say ridiculous nonsense.
The Empire. The home of Taurasi, Moore, Stewart. For a girl in Iowa, there was nothing higher. Recruiting time came. The path looked obvious. The most electrifying talent of her generation, paired with the greatest recruiter the game had ever seen. But the call never came. Geno never picked up the phone. Never called Clark. Never called her parents. Barely even sent a message through her AAU coach. And it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. The excuse? UConn already had Paige Buchers, and Geno didn't want 2 point guards. On paper, understandable. But then came the insult. He suggested that if Clark really wanted UConn, she should have called him. Think about that. The man who built his empire on discovering once-in-a-generation talent before anyone else decided Clark wasn't worth the effort, then blamed a teenager for not chasing him. That wasn't just a recruiting miss. It was the spark of a reckoning. Disrespect. The kind you never forget. And Clark didn't. She filed it away quietly. If Geno Auriemma didn't believe in her, she'd find someone who did. Oh, she chose Iowa, a program without UConn's banners, mystique, or dynasty glow. To outsiders, it looked like a consolation prize. But to Clark, it was freedom. At Iowa, she wasn't Paige's shadow or Geno's afterthought. She was the recruit, the centerpiece, the one who would carry the program. And from the second she laced up in Iowa City, she rewrote the script. Those logo threes weren't just shots, they were statements. The sellout arenas weren't just crowds, they were proof. The record-shattering TV ratings weren't flukes, they were receipts. Every basket, every viral highlight, every broken record whispered the same message. You missed this. Meanwhile, Geno doubled down. Instead of humility, he leaned into arrogance. Instead of recognizing Clark as a generational force, he dismissed her brilliance with condescension, saying she played like a kid in the driveway. But ordinary players don't sell out Madison Square Garden. Ordinary players don't drag the WNBA into mainstream relevance. Ordinary players don't generate millions. And that's the cruel irony. Geno shut the door on Clark. He thought she'd fade into another good but forgettable player. Instead, she built the biggest empire women's basketball has ever seen, without him. And when he finally came back with a contract in hand, Clark didn't rage, didn't gloat. She simply said no. And that one word cost him more than any championship loss ever could. But Geno couldn't let go. Every time Clark's name came up, he found a way to drag her back into Paige Buchers' comparisons. If Clark was fearless, Paige was too. If Clark connected with fans, Paige had done it first. It wasn't random, it was strategy. By tethering Clark's rise to his chosen stars, Geno kept himself in the spotlight. He wanted the world to believe her success wasn't separate from his empire. But the backhanded compliments wore thin. Fans noticed. Analysts noticed. Coaches noticed. Everyone saw through the act. Clark's brilliance didn't need qualifiers. She was drawing bigger crowds than professional franchises, shattering records the sport had never seen, rewriting the conversation around women's basketball. Yet there was Geno, smiling for the cameras, clinging to his throne. Behind the charm was insecurity, The kind that comes when the spotlight shifts and you can't stop it. Eventually, the mask slipped. The sly digs weren't enough anymore. Geno escalated, moving from undermining Clark to outright attacking the people who supported her. For months, he'd hidden behind shade disguised as commentary. But in June 2024, on the Dan Patrick Show, he crossed the line. The Hall of Fame coach, the supposed face of women's basketball, didn't just question Clark. He went after her fans.
The delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's third or fourth in betting odds on being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
His words weren't subtle. He called her supporters delusional, said they didn't understand the game, and then, unbelievably, claimed they were so clueless they were damaging women's basketball itself. And their so-called crime? Believing Clark could finish top 4 in MVP voting as a rookie. To Geno, that wasn't passion, it was stupidity. Diana Taurasi echoed it bluntly, "This kid's in for a rude awakening." But think about what was really happening. Millions of new eyes had just poured into women's basketball because of Clark. Families were buying jerseys. Kids were camping outside arenas to meet her. Casual fans were tuning into WNBA broadcasts for the first time ever. This was a movement. And Geno's response? Not gratitude. Not celebration. But insult. Instead of embracing the surge of energy, he mocked it. This wasn't analysis. It wasn't X's and O's. It was personal. A direct shot at the lifeblood of Clark's rise, the very fans who carried women's basketball into the mainstream. And because he was Geno Auriemma, people listened. His words had weight, which made them all the more damaging, and all the more revealing by dismissing her fans as clueless. Geno wasn't just underestimating them. He was underestimating her. He was saying the hype wasn't real. The success wasn't sustainable. That eventually, he'd be proven right. But here's where it gets delicious. Geno wasn't right. He wasn't even close. Clark didn't clap back on Twitter. She didn't go on a media tour. She didn't need to. Her response came in the only arena that mattered, the court. And what followed wasn't just vindication. It was a demolition of Geno's credibility. Clark went out and won Rookie of the Year. Then she made All-WNBA First Team. And when the MVP votes were counted, she finished exactly fourth. Right where her so-called delusional fans had predicted. The very prediction Geno mocked had become reality. And with it, his authority cracked. This wasn't just a win for Clark. It was vindication for every fan he insulted, for every parent who bought the jersey, every kid who stayed up past midnight to watch, every new supporter who believed. Every parent who brought their kid to see her, every casual fan who tuned in, every new supporter who bought into the hype, Geno dismissed them as a problem. Clark proved they were prophetic. And the beauty of it? She did it without saying a word. Silent revenge. No rant, no confrontation, no drama, just results. Night after night, she put on performances that erased all doubt. Logo threes. Crossovers that froze defenders. Assists that lit up highlight reels. By the time the awards rolled in, there was no debate. She had silenced him without ever speaking his name. Oh, you see the poetry in that? Geno had cast himself as the gatekeeper of women's basketball, the elder statesman who knew better than the fans, better than the media, better than anyone else. But the fans were right. Clark was right. Geno was wrong. Every arena she sold out, every record she shattered, every accolade she earned screamed the same truth. He wasn't the kingmaker anymore. She didn't need him. She never did. And here's the irony. Clark wasn't even trying to prove him wrong. She wasn't chasing his approval. She wasn't thinking about him at all.
Now, there's a lot of investors in this league. One investor, been trying to keep quiet about, his investment in the league ever since his comments that he made about a young rookie. Pretty much, had him in the headlines for about a month and a half. That is Geno Auriemma, dog. I'm here to tell you, he's part owner of this league.
She was just being Clark. And that alone was enough to expose him, humble him, and show the world that he no longer shaped the narrative. She did. By the end of her rookie year, it wasn't just about whether Clark had lived up to the hype. It was about how completely she had annihilated every doubt. Geno's insults didn't age well. They curdled, like milk left in the sun. His dismissals of her fans now read like some of the worst takes in sports history. Bitter, insecure, embarrassingly wrong. But Geno couldn't let go. Being wrong wasn't something he could stomach. And by then, it wasn't just about Clark's game. It was about what she represented, the changing of the guard, the shift in power, the undeniable truth that women's basketball no longer revolved around him. And instead of accepting it, he did what he always does. He kept talking. Interview after interview. Podcast after podcast. Her name never far from his lips. And each time, the same pattern. A little praise, a little dig, a compliment wrapped in a disclaimer. But the more he talked, the clearer it became. Clark wasn't just rewriting record books. She was living rent-free in Geno Auriemma's head. At some point, words weren't enough. Geno had spent months trying to steer the narrative with sly comparisons, backhanded compliments, and digs at Clark's fans. But Clark kept winning, kept shining, and his influence kept shrinking. So, he pivoted. If he couldn't control the narrative with his mouth, maybe he